Good morning, Willard Wildcats. Happy Tuesday, October 13th. Happy birthday today to Andrew D., Juan G., and Adrian O. We hope you have a wonderful birthday on this Tuesday, this IB Green Tuesday. Wildcats, today we're going to read a book, and I want us to think about this book from the lens of being communicators. It's called The Magic School Bus Inside a Hurricane, and it's written by Joanna Cole and Bruce Deegan. And I want you to think about how the author communicates information from Miss Frizzle to us, the readers. And also, we know that parts of the United States are really having not a good time with the hurricane weather. So I thought this would be a good book to give you information about what hurricanes are, because you might be hearing some of these words and what the science is behind them. The Magic School Bus Inside a Hurricane. And I'm going to hold this up close so you can see Miss Frizzle. She's the teacher driving the school bus. Do you guys know these books? Have you seen some of the cartoons? It's a great way to think about science. So I'm going to show you the book and you'll see how she communicates it. So she communicates through conversation bubbles, through notebook paper, through her ideas are being written, and through graphics, through captions. So let me read some of this to you and then we'll look at it again. So we weren't surprised one morning when Miss Frizzle said, "It's a perfect day for our trip to the weather station. We'll meet a team of weather forecasters. We'll learn about our atmosphere. Miss Frizzle says we have to know about air to understand weather. I can't see it," because there's air in a jar and it's empty. Or it looks empty rather. We have to know about water too. Look, there's a little, is that an umbrella there? So there's a lot going on this page. So the author's communicating a lot of information to us. Air is a Mixture of Invisible Gases by Shirley. Air Has Weight by Ralphie. A balloon with air in it is heavier than an empty balloon. Air Contains Water by Wanda. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. When water evaporates, water molecules go into the air. And here's the notebook piece of paper we didn't read yet. The Earth is Wrapped in a Blanket of Air by Tim. There's Earth, the atmosphere. Our atmosphere is a blanket of air hundreds of miles thick. Most of our weather happens in the troposphere, the 8 miles of air that is closest to Earth. And look at all the layers. Most weather happens here on Earth. There's the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, and the thermosphere. The atmosphere is all of these miles high, and there are mile markers as they go. So what do you think about how the information is being communicated? Is it very detailed? Is it interesting? Do you have to go to more than one place to read it? We hadn't finished our experiments about air, but with Frizzy at the wheel, we were going, ready or not. Who's Frizzy? The teacher. "Sorry, I can't go, Miss Frizzle. I have to sharpen my pencil. But Arnold, maybe we'll have a real adventure. In that case, I have to sharpen several pencils." Question: when does the weather change? Answer: when the air changes by Shirley. Is the air hot or cold? It is dry or moist. Is it dry or moist? Is it still or moving? When these things change, the weather changes. Look for a change in the weather, folks. Notice Miss Frizzle's dress. Does it have the weather on it? Now you can stop the video if you wanted to see that picture up close for longer than I held it up. In no time, we were riding along in the old school bus. We were trying to get some music on the radio when we didn't see Miss Frizzle turning a strange little dial on the dashboard. We didn't notice that the bus was changing. Listeners, wind speeds are picking up speed. That radio won't play music. All it does is give the weather. It figures. Wind is just air that's moving, children. Notebook paper. Questions. What makes wind by Arnold? A mass of heavy air rolls in and pushes a mass of lighter air. When the air masses move, that is wind. Winds range from gentle breezes to strong gates that can destroy things. All of a sudden, Dorothy Ann said, "Look, we couldn't believe it. We were all wearing flying suits. We were all sitting in a basket. The bus had turned into a hot air balloon, and we were all about to lift off." At my old school, we never went up in hot air balloons. Sounds like my kind of school. We'll be using this gas burner to heat the air in the balloon. And here's the notebook paper. Heat makes air expand by Molly. Hot air expands because heat makes air molecules bounce far apart. Balloon, room temperature. Air expands and flows into balloons. Hot water heats air. Ask an adult for help when using very hot water. 2 words from Dorothy Ann. When something expands, it spreads. Air molecules are the tiniest bits of air. So what do you think about how all of this is communicated? Do you ever have so much to say you want to say it in different ways, in conversation bubbles and note sheets? We started going up and Miss Frizzle said, did I mention, children, that hot air rises? Class, every day all over the world, science send up special balloons to take weather measurements. There's a weather balloon. We're going up. Wow. We rose higher and higher. Even though the hot air was filling the balloon, the air around us was growing colder. We had to put on warm jackets. It's cold up here. You're not afraid of high places, are you, Arnold? That radio spoke to me. How did it know my name? I knew I should have stayed home today. And here's the notebook notes. See Hot Air by Alex and Rachel. Cut a spiral, needle and thread. The light bulb heats the air. The warm air rises and makes the paper spin. Why does hot air rise? By Carlos. Hot air is lighter than cold air, so it floats on top of the cold air, the way marshmallows float on hot chocolate. Going up, better bundle up by Phoebe. Brr. Warm air rises from Earth as it goes up. It gets colder. You can't see it, but it's all around you. What is it? Air. When warm air rising from Earth carries lots of water vapor molecules, Miss Frizzle continued. As the air rises, it cools down. The water condenses in the air and forms clouds. Did you bring your raincoat, Arnold? Tell me this isn't happening. We drifted into the center of a cloud. Miss Frizzle was right. It was damp in there. The cloud was made of tiny water droplets hanging in the air. When is that teacher bringing her class? Not till later, much later. What kind of clouds are forming around Miss Frizzle and the kids? At the weather station, they said. Weather, a weather word by Dorothy Ann. When the water condenses, molecules of water join together and make drops of liquid water. 3 kinds of clouds by Wanda. Curly or wispy clouds are called cirrus. Layered clouds are called stratus. Lumpy or puffy clouds are called cumulus. Inside the cloud, droplets began coming together. They formed bigger and bigger drops. As the drops became heavier, they started falling. It takes thousands of droplets to form just one raindrop. Most classes stay in on rainy days. Not Miss Frizzle's class. Down below, the weather forecasters were standing in the rain. They didn't see us inside the cloud, but we could hear their voices. One of them said, I hope that teacher knows there's a hurricane watch in effect. Check out my hurricane watch, Arnold. Get it? Hurricane watch? I'm pretending I can't hear. And the notes say, turn dark by, what makes rain clouds turn dark by Gregory. Rain clouds have lots of ice crystals and big heavy raindrops. These black out the sun. Our rain-making projects by Amanda, Jane, and Arnold. And there's ice and a tin can and tongs and an oven mitt and water droplets are created. When you use the stove, remember to ask an adult. What is a hurricane by Flory? A hurricane is one of the most violent kinds of storms. In a hurricane, winds swirl in a circle around the storm center at 74 miles per hour or more. More words from Dorothy Ann. A hurricane watch means that a hurricane may strike within the next 36 hours. A hurricane warning means that a hurricane is likely to strike within the next 24 hours. A warning is more urgent than a watch. As usual, Miss Frizzle paid no attention. She turned up the fire and more hot air rushed into the balloon. As we rose above the cloud, the wind started pushing us south. Before long, we had traveled thousands of miles. Miss Frizzle said we were above a tropical ocean about 500 miles north of the equator. Wow, look at that water. We can go swimming and windsurfing and snorkeling. Below us, blue-green waves were sparkling on a sandy island. Palm trees were waving. It looked like a vacation paradise to us. But Miss Frizzy said, class, we now have arrived at one of the world's largest hurricane breeding grounds. Nearly all hurricanes get started over tropical islands, kids. I've heard that hurricanes are dangerous, so Miss Frizzle is taking us to one. She would. What is the equator by Carlos? The equator is an imaginary line around the Earth's middle. It divides the globe into 2 equal parts. Why is it hotter near the equator? By Michael. Because the way the Earth is tilted, the sun's rays almost always shine toward the Earth's middle. This means there are no cold winters there. And there's an illustration of that. Why do hurricanes have names? By Carmen. Often more than one hurricane is brewing at once. It's easier to keep track of them if they're given names. Some famous hurricanes: Agnes, Andrew, Bob, Elena, Gilbert, Gloria, Ivan, Katrina. Hi, Bob. What's happening, Gloria? And there's another illustration of the equator. I lived through a big hurricane. I lived through Hurricane Alicia when I was about 8 years old. Class, remember that as hot air rises from the ocean surface, the water vapor in the air condenses and forms clouds, said the Frizz. Down below, more hot air rushed in from all sides to take the place of rising air. In the middle of the rising air, a column of sinking air formed. We started sinking in with it. A hurricane is starting because the warm, moist air rises, and here come the winds. Our balloon is falling. Oh no, the air is sinking. Water vapor condenses. When is hurricane season? By Rachel. Most hurricanes begin in the late summer and early fall. That is when tropical oceans are warmest. The warmer the ocean is, the stronger the hurricane is likely to become. Oh dear, said Miss Frizzle, the balloon must have sprung a leak. Hot air was rushing out and the balloon was plummeting fast. Jump ship, class, shouted Miss Frizz. She jumped overboard and we went after her right away. We knew it was a big mistake. Do all tropical storms become hurricanes? By Amanda Jane. No. All around the world, there are more than 100 tropical storms each year. Only about 60 of them grow to hurricane strength, and only a handful of those ever reach places where people live. Hurry up and jump, Arnold. I can't look. Follow me, kids. The wind was blowing in the clouds into a huge circle. The storm started to take on the typical shape of a hurricane. Isn't it fascinating, children? Shouted Miss Frizzle. Help, we're going around in circles. I'm getting dizzy. It was more fascinating than it was terrifying. We were caught at the edge of a storm, blowing around and around in a giant whirlwind. That whirlwind was a hurricane. A typical hurricane has a lifespan of about 10 days. Listeners, we'll be telling you about the whole hurricane. Maybe its batteries will run out soon. And look, there's information here you can read. In the clouds around us, huge bolts of lightning were flashing. We thought it was all over for us, but then we saw the bus again. It had become a weather plane, the kind that explores hurricanes. We tumbled into a rescue chute and fell onto the plane. That is the bus, plane. During a thunderstorm, lightning can make more electricity than a big city uses in a week. It's our bus. It looks different. Let's get on now. Come back. Thunder crashed and boomed. We covered our ears. Miss Frizzle turned the plane and headed straight toward the center of the storm. We had a feeling someone was missing. We are now experiencing the hurricane close up. But not to worry, Arnold. I'm sure we'll be fine. Why does everything always happen to me? Boom. And there's more information for you to read. We flew through the miles of thunderstorms and Miss Frizzle took roll call. Guess who was missing? Arnold. He had fallen and missed the plane. Arnold fell, poor kid. Oh no, Arnold is experiencing the hurricane close up, but not to worry, Tim. I'm sure he'll be fine. Miss Frizzle marked Arnold absent and flew straight into the storm. We're flying into the hurricane. What a disaster. Why does everything always happen to us? We'll be seeing stormy seas today, Arnold. Seeing stormy seas? I'm touching them, smelling them, gulp, tasting them. This is like the ultimate field trip, isn't it? The further we went, the faster the winds blew. At last, we came to the inner hurricane and center, the eye wall, a ring of heavy clouds around the storm center. In the eye wall, the winds were blowing, the fastest yet. The rain was coming down in sheets. The eye wall is the fiercest part of the hurricane. We're encountering turbulence, class. Turbulence is when the air is violently disturbed. I am violently disturbed. All around were columns of air called hot towers or chimneys. They were sucking up more and more hot, moist air from the ocean. The heat energy from the air was feeding the storm and making it stronger. The plane was shaking, and so were we. I'm all shook up. Please stay seated, class. Okay, here we go. Then suddenly everything was quiet. Class, we've entered the eye or center of the hurricane, announced Miss Frizzle. The ocean waves still crashed below and the winds howled outside, but in the eye only gentle breezes blow. Up above, the sky was blue and the sun was shining. We relaxed ourselves. Peace and quiet, balmy breezes. We flew about 30 miles across the eye. Then Friz called, "We will enter the other side of the eye wall now." "Don't go," we cried. But the plane was already on its way back into the hurricane's fierce wind and rain. We're trying to reach the land before the full force of the hurricane hits. Good idea. The hurricane is approaching land, and we will be heavy flooding, and there will be heavy flooding along the coast. The entire hurricane was moving across the ocean toward land, and we were going with it. The right corner of the hurricane, as you were looking toward the land and the strongest wind and rain and the highest ocean waves, shouted the Friz. Naturally, she flew directly into that part. A hurricane moves like a spinning top across the floor. It moves two ways. It spins around us and it travels forward like this, right? Arnold should be reaching land any minute now. Let's take a spin. The hurricane should be reaching land any minute now. We must evacuate before the floods come. Tell me about it. When people are told to evacuate, that means they have to leave quick. As the hurricane approached land, the wind blew up trees and roots and blew the roofs off of houses. It also blew ashore a huge dome of water called the storm surge. The ocean rose 10 feet higher than usual, and on top of that, there were giant waves. We were horrified to watch as the storm surge swept over the shore below. But that was nothing compared to the horror we felt when we heard that Friz shouting above the sound of the roaring water. "We seem to be running out of gas, children." Sure enough, the plane was dipping lower and lower. As we fell into the water, we saw Arnold waving to us from a nearby roof. "That plane looks familiar. We need to evacuate now." Somehow, Arnold managed to get on the plane before we were swept away by the waves at the front edge of the hurricane. The water was creeping in the windows. The plane was going to sink for sure. Then we saw a dark funnel shape coming our way. "I've seen that shape on TV," said Ralphie. "I read about it in a book," said Keisha. The twister came right for us. The next thing we knew, it had picked us up, and we were traveling by tornado. When I was teaching in Houston, I had a tornado right outside my classroom window. It picked up the slide and moved it. We were all safe because we had been practicing drills and we knew what to do. After a while, we felt a bump and looked around. The tornado had set us down gently. We were in our old school bus again. We were dressed in our regular clothes again, and the hurricane was over, and we were at the gas station. Miss Frizzle filled up the tank and drove down the road as if nothing had happened. As earlier, class, we were on our way to visit the weather station, she said. Do you think inside the hurricane was more interesting than the weather station? Probably. The weather forecasters at the station had a lot to tell us about hurricanes, and we had a lot to tell them too. We finally drove back to school and finished our weather projects. Do you think they had a lot of good stuff to put in those weather projects? I think so. After the trip, we needed some time to relax. Miss Frizzle said we could have a party. We had a great time, crazy dancing, yummy snacks, and for a while, we didn't even think about Miss Frizzle's next class trip. Look at our next class trip. Think it's about bees? Perhaps. The magic school bus mailbag. Look at all the letters. Okay, Wildcats, I hope that you enjoyed this Inside a Hurricane book from the Magic School Bus. Remember, Wildcats, we are safe, respectful, and responsible. Have a wonderful day. And I want you to think about being communicators and how you can communicate your research and your information. Have a great day.